And I had the content from Ireland, and I thought, okay, just watching drone footage for an hour might not be compelling enough. And so I was on Instagram as well, and I found an artist in Kyoto named Akira Miyanaga. And Akira is also a professor at a university there, but he also has been dabbling into the arts and playing around with stocked footage and doing some very cool compositions, very short 5 or 10 second clips. And he incorporates a lot of landscapes, a lot of scenery. And every time I watched his videos, I felt, even for a small while, I was traveling, virtually. And so I reached out to Akira and I suggested that maybe he take a look at the drone footage from Ireland to use in one of his clips. And he agreed, but he said, I don't want to just take the content and make something that I have no knowledge about. And he said, so if I'm going to do this, I would like to learn about Ireland. Where is it? Its history, its culture. He wanted to take 4 or 5 weeks to study it. And so the seeds were planted, and now I had basically decided, okay, let's try to bridge Japan and Ireland in some way. It looks like there's cultural interest as well. So I formed a team of volunteers basically that came together, and we took Akira on a virtual trip of Ireland through, we brought in people to do Zoom calls, historians, folk writers, musicians. And so Akira, over 4 weeks, we were documenting his journey, basically, learning and discovering about Ireland through both Japanese that have been to Ireland and of course Irish people living in Japan and in Ireland. And at the end of the day, at the end of the project, he had made a 10-minute composition called Run, about his interpretation of what Ireland is in a very abstract way. And so we had broadcast that on June 29th on Zyko platform, to give people, an experience of traveling, but also a way of connecting with one another. And the project was, it was quite challenging because at that time we didn't really know what we were going to make at the end, what the end product was, let alone all of us were working remotely and all of us did not know each other prior to the project. So it was really interesting to have to work daily remotely with people that you don't know, and to pull off the execution of what's close to a 1 hour production.
Wow, it's
Yeah.
really impressive. It's beautiful, like creative, artistic work, as well as great drone footage, like you said. And it's a lot of it is showing things upside down. So, so one side is Ireland, and then the sky is Japan. Is that right? Have I got it right?
Well, he actually, I don't know if he incorporated anything from Japan. It might all be from Ireland, but he does use a lot of different perspectives. I think he'll use a sailboat that's in the sky that's upside down. And you almost don't know what you're watching for a little bit, but it all comes together in the music. And so, this was kind of a pilot project. We didn't know what was going to happen after, and we still kind of don't. What I do hope that comes out of it, like you had just mentioned, is maybe there can be more collaborations between two countries. A lot of times, whenever we're promoting destinations, and that's the business that I'm in, is promoting destination from one perspective, is when there's a cross collaboration, that people from both sides can artistically make something or exchange information, that it becomes a lot richer. And we did find that a lot of the Japanese that watched it didn't feel that it was Irish people talking about how great Ireland was in one way, but it was really this culmination of exchange. And we found that Ireland and Japan did have a lot of similarities. And we can probably go a lot deeper in this series. And so we're actually talking with various entities and organizations that, like, what can we do with this now moving forward, maybe to A, produce more content, or B, what kind of long-term cultural relations might come between Ireland and Japan, or maybe, Japan and other countries. And I think that enriches both sides. So that was kind of, well, we originally went in as kind of a virtual trip, really, at the end of the day, it grew to be much more of a personal connection amongst people, and in a deep cultural exchange, which I think is going to last beyond the lockdown, and really have some roots planted here that people will look back and say, "Hey, wow, look what happened because of the situation, and now we have this amazing relationship with Ireland and Japan." So
Yeah, great. And
yes,
I often looking through your stuff, watching the clips and stuff from that film, it makes me think about what is the future of travel and how can we help, and this is the problem with traditional travel as well, how can we help locals benefit from tourism, right? How can we have a balance between the customer coming in and the quality of life of local people? And I think there is a lot of potential, and we'll talk about that a bit later, maybe
okay,
from some of the other projects you point out in your
sure,
four tech every tourist industry person needs to be thinking about right now.
okay.
But yeah, there, I think with AR, there actually may be more potential to benefit local communities than the traditional model of mass tourism, cruise tourism, over tourism, definitely.
Yes, yeah, I agree.
Let's talk about a previous project you did with Nepal, the
Okay,
AR.
sure. So this was back in, refresh my memory. When did this? It was 2015 or
2015 looks like. Yeah.
yeah, 2015. There was a huge earthquake in Nepal, and at that time I was working for an AR startup. Actually, they were out of New Zealand originally, and they had an office here in Tokyo. It's called Quiver Vision. Originally, it was called Puteco Limited, and they were one of the first companies that developed a technique of making coloring pages for children, where you could then download an app on your phone, open the app, which opened a camera, view it, and it would extract the color off the coloring page and bring that into a live 3D object as you colored it right in front of you on the table or wherever. And so I was working for them, and we were doing a lot of things about education and, of course, some marketing and promotional stuff. But I thought when this happened in Nepal, and there's a lot of fundraiser activity as well that was taking place. And I was also a member of an NPO called All Hands Volunteers, who I had come in contact with in Tohoku years prior. And I suggested to them that we engage people with the AR technology that we had developed. We make some coloring pages that people could enjoy, and B, could be a way of them doing fundraising through in-app purchases of the AR experience itself. And so we developed, I think, 3 pages that you could download at home. You could color them, and they had everything from like a mandala, which if you colored it, you'd come to life and different shapes would come out and dance around, and it had Nepalese music. Another experience was, like, where is Nepal? It was basically an earth that popped up in front of you, and it showed the flag of Nepal, and you could zoom in, and it had a lot of images and videos, so it was very educational. And I think then we had a Nepalese flag that you could color, and there was some history there. So we actually were able to leverage the technology to engage with people that probably wouldn't have maybe not have had interest or not have known much about Nepal, and educate them. But we were also able to fundraise and put money into the hands of an NPO, which was then doing the work there on the ground in Nepal. And so we literally, you could be sitting in your room in Tokyo, coloring, a piece of paper and supporting groundwork in Nepal. I just thought it was so amazing. This was back in 2015, so 5 years ago. It's not like the technology has just suddenly appeared. And so I think that now is also a way that we could really, maybe a lot of times in like disasters or hard times, is when innovation can really have its chance to make an impact. And so I do hope that maybe that's the case moving forward.
Yeah, it was really interesting. The video on the page are really worth watching to give you an idea of how it would work in a classroom or at home. I like the Porsche 3D augmented reality one as well. This would be very useful for product or service introduction. Why not? You know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If I really encourage if you go to the quivervision.com website, you can go and you can download the pages for free. They have Quiver experiences that are a little bit more marketing, and there's also Quiver Education, which is all stuff made basically for elementary school students to experience, animals, molecules, to be able to see that live in front of you. I think they have landmarks now, and so they're really doing some really cool stuff. And the funny thing is, we built the pages for kids, but when adults sit down in color, which is all, there was a trend a few years ago with adult coloring books. I don't know why that went out of fashion, but they were selling pretty well. That adults really, really latch onto it and enjoy the experience and learn something more by engaging too. So yeah, I definitely encourage anyone out there to go and just download the app, print out some pages, and really try it. To watch a video is nice, but to experience it with your phone, it's really amazing.
Yeah. I also thought about the need for relaxation right now, how people are dealing with the stress of coronavirus, making something like a coloring book of a destination around the world, coloring it in just to clear your mind, kind of meditative. I think that's why those were popular, right? And
Yeah.
then using your phone to have the augmented reality, to have extra video loops or extra information come up. I think it really could have great applications into the tourism industry and to connect people to different destinations and give them that extra sense of release in stress.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that now we're seeing that we can't physically travel. We can't go from point A to point B, that a lot of the experiences can actually come to you. And so, the reality is that for most people, even in their lifetime, they're never going to be able to physically visit all the places that they want. um, but they can still engage with the destination's brand in a way, whether it's food or music or whatever that is. And so we have to find a way that it's almost a two-way exchange, and so that tourism and travel is not only, and believe me, I love physically going somewhere. If I could every month, I would. But the reality of it is, yeah, it's not sustainable. And when I came into the industry last year, kind of at its peak, everything was flying high, record numbers, everyone was high-fiving, and it was wonderful, a lot of economic benefit. But the big topic, the elephant in the room, was the over tourism. We're going to have to start looking at this in sustainable tourism and smart cities. This next decade, we're going to have to figure that out. And I think in a way, coronavirus a little bit helped resolve a lot of those problems. The big question is going to be whenever it is safe to go back and the borders start opening and logistically the planes start flying again, how are we going to promote, regulate, disperse people moving forward? And so I think that we have to find ways to bring more experiences to people at home, or even if it's not at home, to where they're at. So I think, yeah, technology can do that.
Yeah, for sure. And then you could, like you showed with the Nepal case, you could also add local benefit, like local people who get involved in the project. Maybe they take part in a short video introducing making washi paper, for example. And then anybody who clicks on that part, that shop or that artisan would get some financial benefit as well. I mean, there's so many great sustainable tourism applications, I think.
Oh yeah, you could tie in e-commerce to it as well. So yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff that you can do now, and it's not so far-fetched. All of the various technologies are, before they were a bit segmented. but now everything's coming together. Even AR, one of the biggest hurdles was a lot of people had to download a different app for different experiences, or your phone had to have, so many specs. But now the phones, of course, are getting better, and web AR is the next frontier that's kind of emerged last year, where you can basically send someone a URL, just even as simple as in Facebook Messenger. They click on it, with their phone, and then the AR experience pops up. There's no app download or anything. And so I think as the friction becomes less to the experience and people don't have to download things and wait and loading times, I think people will use it, and it can provide more than just a novelty wow experience. It can actually provide a more applicable experience for the user and then the people on the other end as well.
Yeah, for sure. Holy Grim says that's a great idea. Thank you, Holly. Okay, let's go to your article for tech that tourism industry should be thinking about and using right now. Great article. And of course, you included me. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. You've got some great ideas there. Let's go through them.
Sure.
Can you introduce your article a little bit?
Yeah, so I wrote this article, I believe it was like two weeks ago, and I, coming from the digital and the tech space and working in travel for a year now, I saw that there was actually a really big gap, and a lot of people weren't talking about how these technologies can really be applied, especially right now, not just an idea for the future. And so I tried to give actual examples in the article of people or organizations that are using the various technologies. And I think one of the first ones I had mentioned was what's called photogrammetry, kind of a big word that has really kind of emerged in the last year or so. And it ties in with AR and VR in a way. But basically, it allows you to go out and, like 360 cameras, which we've all kind of experienced those experiences before, you can basically take images of an environment, very small images, and kind of mesh them or map them together and create a virtual or a digital twin of the place itself. And unlike a VR 360 where you're basically in a sphere of images, it's three-dimensional. And so in photogrammetry, there was a video on there where a guy named Andrew Svanberg, he had made a small video about his memories of Australia. And if you do watch the video, I think it's 2 minutes long, and it kind of takes you through Australia, and the sounds are amazing. But he did all of that by mapping it with camera. And it's a 3D digital world. If you can tell it's not completely realistic, but it's pretty much as close as you can get. And so I found that could really be something that destinations and tourism should be looking at right now, is like, how do we use photogrammetry to make a digital double basically of our destination and be able to allow people to experience that now.
That's amazing. I thought that was like a animation, like CG. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it does look like animation. In a way, it's kind of a mesh between images and CG. And so the technology is getting so good now that a little scary for some people how realistic it is, to be honest. But I do think that destinations, and especially like if we're thinking about historical or preserving places that we're not going to be able to see in a few years or a few decades, really start thinking about how do we make the digital double so that our children or grandchildren can not only see the picture now, but they could literally walk through and see what it looked like in the past. So I think this is one technology that we are going to see in the next few years become very commonplace.
That's really exciting because that's one of the recommendations I make to local destinations now, is you should be going out when it's good weather and taking photos and short videos of your area and building a brand during this time when you don't have tourism, and start to get the information, get the content out there, because people aren't aware of how great your area is.
Well, actually, when the Ireland Japan thing started, prior to this, I actually saw all of the videos coming out. I think Venice got a lot of attention for how empty it was, but the water was cleaning up and the air quality was improving. And I thought, wow, this is good for the earth. And I think that all of the destinations, tourism boards should embrace this moment, like you said, either to get footage or to maybe really look at how we now take advantage of, okay, we're always have too many people, so we can't repair that bridge or we can't implement uh, different measures for more sustainable activities. Why don't we do that now? Cleanup efforts, refurbishing, restoration. Like right now is kind of the time for doing all those projects that they put off. But also, like you said, you can really capture the beauty of a place now, engage people currently, and then when they do come back as well, try to implement measures to keep that.
And on the flip side, you can show the reality. You can show the plastic pollution on our beaches and hopefully put some soft pressure on the industries that are making it there, you know?
Yeah. I like that you talk about reality. Sometimes people say, "Well, you work in AR, VR. What is it?" And I said, "Augmented reality, virtual reality." But what I'd like to focus on is the R, or the
Yes,
reality,
yes.
because actually you have to understand the applications of it do impact, real things. Just like the Nepal fundraiser and whatnot. So there always has to be, I think, not just the novel digital experience, but there has to be some connection to the reality that makes an impact,
Yeah.
whether it's a photograph, a video, or the AR, the VR.
And it cannot be greenwashed. That was a problem with advertising tourism in the past, right? Is everything looks amazing, you go there and it's like that's not from the picture, you know. So if you have AR or VR, you have to have that element of what it actually looks like, as well as enhanced, which is sometimes a tricky balance, right?
Yeah, yeah, it definitely is. Yeah.
I love this. 1 million people just visited a virtual destination and it was amazing. You also talked about this in your podcast, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
really exciting. Can you introduce this? The
Yeah.
Tomorrowland?
Tomorrowland, yeah. So I've started writing weekly articles where I'm finding how technology and travel tourism are overlapping. And this wasn't specifically travel related. It was an event organizer out of Belgium that does EDM concerts for the past couple years, and I think they usually draw about 400,000 people to these concerts, which is huge, huge number. Um, but at the same time, they're kind of capped. It's kind of limited to 400,000. So, what they did this year, because they couldn't have the event, the show must go on, and they pulled together, I think it was around 200 people, artists, CG creators. In 3 months' time, they produced not only like a virtual concert where they recorded, I believe 60 artists recorded in studios, but they built a variety of stages, and they actually built an island for the event to be held. And so, the experience wasn't just come listen to music. They could have done that easily just in a studio and filmed that, but they actually built an island with weather, with seasons. I think they said, it's sunny in one area, you can go to another place and it's snowing or something. And so I found this fascinating that they did an online event, but it really incorporated again the concept of going somewhere, at least virtually, or traveling to a place. And so I have found a lot of similarities between the music industry and the travel industry. People go to concerts. They not only go to the concert, they go to the location, the destination of where it's being held. And so I have, in talking with people, there's a big gap as well between the event organizers or the music industry and working with the tourism boards properly to say, okay, now that all these people are coming in, A, how do we do it sustainably? But B, what could people experience when they come? Or, what could they give back rather than just coming, leaving a bunch of garbage and leaving? And so I thought, this was a really cool model where not only did they bring 1 million people, they over doubled their 400,000. It was very sustainable. And, I think for let's just say this was a fictitious destination, but they could have made it a real place, right? And people could have experienced real Belgium, and then had an interest to maybe physically go there, but at least to be able to have the digital experience, they could connect in some way, which then makes them interested in Belgian food or drink, which helps the economy in different ways. And so I think travel and tourism actually it impacts more than just going there and staying at the hotel and the tax dollars at the airport. But you come back, you buy food, drink, music, even in your home country that's maybe related to the country that you visited, and so it impacts food and agriculture, all of these various different components of a place.
Absolutely. It impacts the branding of the country as well as branding of the destination and the food and the culture and the exports, even technology, exports from Japan, technology exports. They find that if people have an interest in visiting Japan, that they're
Yeah.
more likely to buy Japanese cars or Japanese TVs. That's amazing, right?
Well, yeah, it's kind of like the Ireland Japan thing that we did. We had Irish musicians that had their music on the broadcast, and they were thrilled that their music was being heard by Japanese. Vice versa for Akira, Irish people got to see this Japanese artist in Kyoto that they never would have known, and who knows if he can, he did say whenever it's safe to go, I definitely want to go to Ireland, and we all do now. And so and those musicians are going to want to come to Japan. And so I think if there's more of a reciprocal exchange, like I think we talked about earlier, more than, we're all just trying to grab at people coming, either inbound or the outbound are fighting for the outbound. There's got to be some cross, I think, of inbound and outbound in order to balance it.
Yeah, for sure. And the future of travel, once we do have travel, or even just domestically, is definitely going to have to be more sustainable, I think, because you're going to have to choose your travel more carefully. It's going to cost a little bit more. You're going to have to spend more time in fewer areas, right? So a lot of the problems we have with tourism won't exist in the future. I hope.
Yeah,
Fingers crossed.
exactly. Yeah.
You also introduced digital heritage, like a really interesting uh, website. What was it? Let's see. I've got it here. Company that's introducing Tokyo Scan series, different museums. This was in your same 4 article. Let's see. Ray's New Media.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. Ray's Digital. Actually, so these guys are in Spain.
Okay.
And again, yeah, it's funny all these cross kind of border cross cultural things that are happening now, but they had actually come here, I think it was last year. And this again is using photogrammetry. So they came in, they do a lot of stuff walking through back alleys of Tokyo. And so they scanned these alleys with phones or cameras, and then they stitched them together to make basically 3D walkable environments. Now, this is a little more VR. I mean, of course, you can watch it on video, but if you had a headset like an Oculus or some of the various VR components, now when you put on a VR headset, you're actually immersed in the space. Whereas AR, you're still in your environment, you're in your room, and then the object is here, either floating in space or locked down to the floor. And so they are doing a lot more photogrammetry work as well. And again, it's kind of a good way to preserve, I think, historical areas or places maybe that are going to be knocked down and replaced by a huge skyscraper in the next couple years. Here in Tokyo, as we see that often. So yeah, they're really doing some cool work, and I hope that they're another kind of younger startup that hopefully by me mentioning them that tourism agencies and cities see the value in this stuff as not just being like a novelty, wow, that's cool, but it can actually have a lot of applications.
Yeah, for sure. I see a lot of potential with that kind of technology.
Yep.
Another company you mentioned is Yellow Design.
Yeah, Yellow Design. So they're in Ireland. These guys were the ones that gave me a call back in March and said, "Hey, Jess, I think we could do something with one of the drone pilots that we work with." So they're actually a design agency, and they do a lot with web. But it was last year that they decided to make a product called was it- let me get this right, AR or Smart City AR 360. And what they wanted to do was help cities have a way to kind of monitor their tourism capacity and traffic using public transport data. And so this is all available to the public basically, where you can see data on where people are going and when, using public transport specifically. And so huge problem there in Belfast where they are is everyone goes to the same places at the same time. It's a really rather small city, and so they wanted to kind of map this and give the city a way to see uh, where they're having their bottlenecks and be able to hopefully study it and be able to plan better. But on top of that, they developed an app for consumers to be able to download, and it can help them navigate using AR technology. If you're walking around, there can be arrows or information. You can also experience there in Belfast the home of the Titanic, where the Titanic was docked. You can basically, if you're there at that location, you'd get a little pop-up. You can buy for like $5 a ticket to experience the Titanic in life size, in real size, and view the Titanic, get information. It's a really cool product. It's not out yet, but I think they're going to be pushing it out sometime this year. And so they were preparing for kind of over tourism, how to help that problem with the cities, and also for visitors when they physically go there. And I think they still have an application for that, maybe in the next 12 to 18 months when people come back. So what I suggested to them now is, while people aren't visiting Belfast, you could still put the app out and you could let people experience some of those things at their home. And so Yellow Design is, really looking ahead at what are the problems both from the city side as well as the consumer side and the small businesses around the tourist areas that probably don't get a lot of recognition. What the app will do is tell you if you're visiting the harbor around 11:30 and viewing the Titanic. By the way, there are a few cafes within half a mile away that you can go and visit, or a pottery shop, or whatever it may be. And so it's really tying in a whole ecosystem. And so I really hope that they get the opportunity to deploy their app here soon, and we can all try it.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And it reminds me of the point you raised about it'll tell you which street to take, which is less busy. We have this in our cars with GPS. The GPS tells us take this road instead of that one because it's less traffic. Well, that is perfect for traveling to a place that usually only one road or one street is really busy. The next one is less busy. And because people are on their phones, there is that data in real
Yeah.
time. So you mentioned Google as well. Google is very interested in this kind of technology. And hopefully we will see this kind of recommendation as you're visiting a place. Oh, you should take this street because it's less busy, especially now because of coronavirus.
Oh, well, yeah. One of the things I talked with Michael at Yellow Design was I think that your application now it incorporates the safety feature, because when people do come back, you could actually make sure that the app tells them the distance they need to stay at if they're getting too close, various elements. And so safety, psychological safety, I think is another big thing people are going to have trouble with coming back. Is it really safe for me to be in this area? And so, if there's ways that these apps can somehow tell you, safer places to go or not. That's also a thing that AR, and there's also like sound or voice AR, which is a whole other element coming into play, where you could be walking around, and when you walk 50 meters ahead, that in that area, a voice or some kind of sound is activated, like maybe someone's voice telling you to look left, and you could look left and notice something that wasn't there. So that's really cool technology that's a little more in the pipeline, but it's definitely coming.
Yeah, and personalization, right? So I'm a vegan. When I'm somewhere and somebody's having a vegan restaurant special, they can alert me to that. Oh, a block over if you're interested. But you have to, hopefully in the future you can kind of control how much of this information comes in. You don't want to be bombarded
Yeah,
by information all the time as well.
sure.
But certainly you can choose how much and how often, right?
Yeah, yeah, of course, yes.
You also mentioned Quisto.
Questa, yeah, Questa's a cool little app, startup out of Romania. So I'm tying about every country here.
That's great.
I've discovered all of them, mostly during lockdown. Some of them before, based here in Tokyo, which is amazing that you can connect with all these people worldwide. But Questo was built to provide quests for people to experience on their phone. This is not using AR. Basically, just like a guided walking tour, you can go to a city and you can find a quest that was built either by people or maybe it's a tour agency. They basically register them on Questo. You can decide if you want a haunted quest or if you want an educational quest, whatever it is. A lot of them have themes to them or more of a story. And so basically you can purchase, I think they're anywhere from $10 to $15. You purchase the quest, and then there's various clues as you're walking around the city to find something written on the back of the clock tower, or visit this cafe and there's a book on the shelf, and once you discover it or take a picture, it unlocks another clue. And so I think that this is also going to be the future of, well, I don't want to say the future even, I want to say the present of moving forward, how we all interact with tourism. And we could actually disperse large groups by giving people quests, various quests. You could maybe take, let's just say, even if we do have large tour groups that still exist, you could disperse that 30-person group into fives, give them all 6 quests, all meet back, and they could share what they learned. And so I think this company's on the right track. And of course, even now during COVID, you could still go out and do a few quests even without mass tourism.
Yeah, and one of the exciting things I think which would appeal to anybody who likes Pokemon Go or any kind of game where you can get points or you can get different value added by
Right.
doing the activity. They also give points if you figure out the quest or find certain things in it's like an online scavenger hunt. So yeah, lots of great potential there to kind of educate the consumer in a way as well by educating through fun and
Yeah.
games, right? This might be definitely the future of guiding.
Yep. Yeah. I do think so. The gamification of it all.
Yeah, how fun. And of
Yes.
course you mentioned streaming events.
Yes. Yes. This is definitely. I think we've all become accustomed to it now. And there's various kinds of events or webinars or interviews like this that have come about, but I have seen that more and more, I think the music industry really took the lead here on this. But I do see the potential for destinations to also, and I think Australia a couple months ago did a big week-long campaign. I think, it was like 12 hours each day for 5 days straight, and they were in various locations, and it was all live streaming. And so I think that the technology has gotten to the point where, I mean, a live stream here or a pre-recorded, you can safeguard and do pre-recorded live streams as well. This is going to be something that a lot of destinations should consider. I call it a destination broadcast. I mean, you could almost literally create a platform maybe where, just as you have TV channels, you could say, I want to tune into the Kyoto channel today. And it's not just, there's a lot of those live cams. You can go on YouTube and watch them. They're rather boring. They're interesting, but 5 or 10 seconds. But you could almost create like a series of broadcasts for destinations for people to tune in at different times, I believe, with live streaming.
That's a great idea. And
Yeah.
something that I've always suggested to destinations or products or services is you have to be reliable, right? So if you're doing live streaming, do it every weekday, right? Do it at this time and this time every day. Do it
Yeah.
on every Friday. Like just choose a time and place and keep it up. Don't
Yeah,
just give it up every now and again. Like sometimes we'll make a destination map, places are really happy to be on it, and then we hear from the users that that place is never open, or the timing, even on Google Map and the place listing now with coronavirus, there's a lot of unpredictability in
yeah,
terms of, am I going to go and be able to get that? Are they even going to be open? Right?
sure.
So live streaming, I think, has that layer of transparency,
Yep.
and that helps the customer feel like, oh wow, they are there right now. I could go virtually or I could go physically and visit or take part in their service or product, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why every destination or tourism board right now doesn't have a 9 a.m. show that if I'm going to go to Kyoto tomorrow, that I could tune in and see like what are the weather conditions, what's happening, what's new, be aware of this. Um, Very easy to do, very cost efficient too. Yeah, I think maybe sometimes such drastic change limits people's ability to pivot quickly, but it's really not that hard. And once you do it once, it's a little painful. Do it a second time, I could have done that better. By the time you get to the third go around, you're like, all right, like it's starting to click. And so I would highly recommend destinations leverage live streaming right now. And like you said, be consistent. Just know that at 9 o'clock I can tune in, and if I miss it, it's archived somewhere on demand.
Yeah. And a lot of local destinations or local products or services or people working in business in Japan seem very nervous about live streaming. Jessop and I are both live streaming professionals, so please get in touch. Also, a bit of advice after your live stream and once it's hosted somewhere, you can edit it,
Yeah,
right? So if something goes really wrong, which actually is good because people trust it more and they think,
right.
oh, wow, that is really happening right now,
Sure.
right? So
Yeah.
I wouldn't edit it, but if you really want to, you can edit
Yeah.
after the fact. So if you say something that's not appropriate or something, you can edit that out. It's only the live streaming audience that sees everything.
Yeah, and it's authentic.
Yeah,
It's
authentic,
okay.
yes.
It's okay to make a mistake, especially when you're live. And I think that people actually connect with that more and they remember so I think we have to make things a little more authentic as well. I think you had mentioned like the greenwashing and just kind of sometimes tourism makes things to be everything perfect. And we all know that when we travel, like it's not always perfect or paradise either. And so some of the hardships that even you go through when you travel actually do make the experience more memorable. And a lot of good can come out of a bad experience too. Someone could step up and show you their true sympathy or empathy, basically. So
Yeah.
I think it's important that we're all just kind of being a little more real, a little bit more transparent here. And so, live streaming definitely does that.
Absolutely. And that's, the honesty part of it. How many TV programs do you watch in Japan where everything they eat is oishi, right? Every review is only positive, right? Whereas the Western perspective, we want more reality in our reviews. We want
Sure.
to know what the person actually thought. Like, what was the good and the bad? Maybe I don't agree with them, but even if they say something a little bit negative, I kind of trust them more, right?
Sure.
So there's that element of it too, which I think needs to happen more in Japan
Yeah,
with tourism.
I agree. I agree.
Anything we haven't touched on that you'd like to mention before we finish?
Well, I think we've covered quite a lot here. You definitely
My
did your
goodness.
research.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That was so fun. And I think we touched on so many things. I do want to mention your podcast, which I thought was really fun. Can you introduce that a little bit?
Yeah, so I 2 weeks ago started a podcast again, just to kind of keep myself busy, keep myself sharp. It's called Where Did Travel Go? And this was started by a friend of mine named Laura Blackhall. Laura is from the UK. She's lived in Asia for 7, 8 years, I think. She started a tour company called Hello Tours in Hong Kong 4 or 5 years ago. Um, Very successful there. She then expanded to Singapore and then moved to Japan last year to start up her third operation. And they kicked off in January. great timing. Um,
No,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So they, they're still up operating. She has not closed the doors actually. So big shout out to Laura, and they've started or will be starting residence tours, basically ways for not only visitors to experience their city, but locals to go out and maybe experience their city in ways that they haven't. And so we're talking about that. But the podcast was really meant to be kind of a sounding board for both of us to really be able to A, share information on what we're both hearing from the travel industry, and B, bring a little bit of humor, lightheartedness to it, also keeping it very real. We make a lot of mistakes on the podcast, and so we're going to try to do every Friday as well. Like you said, keep it consistent. Every Friday, try to put out a podcast on Anchor and Spotify, I believe, called Where Did Travel Go?
That's awesome. And if you're ever looking for guests,
Okay, definitely, definitely, definitely. It's
mark
got to
me
be
down.
reciprocal.
Mark me
And I
down. I'd
believe,
love to
I,
collaborate.
I believe collaboration, it's really become a collaborative economy now. And so, Laura and I probably never would have really worked together previously. We're really in different spaces of travel, but now everyone has to kind of come together to move forward collectively. I mean, I think I heard someone say, it was very true. She said, there's nobody on earth that is not affected by the current situation. A lot of times when things happen, it happened in the US or it's happened in the Middle East and that's tragic, but I'm still okay here. Literally everyone is in this together. And so I think that a lot of companies and individuals now have to come together and more of, trying to get yours or the company's trying to get its own profits. It's really now going to be about a collaborative economy, which goes into like what I call new travel too, where it's really going to be about, okay, the tour operators really need to work closely with the destination, not separately and just trying to profit off of their own tours. The hotels, the airlines, everyone really needs to say, all right, we're all in it together. It's all one big food chain, to be honest. And if one link is broken, it's all broken. So I hope that Laura and I really want to share our experience, but we also want to share the experience of others and give them an opportunity to tell what they're working on and also what and how they've pivoted during this time, A, to survive, and then B, to come out of this different or better than before when we got into it. So that's
Absolutely.
really what the podcast is going to be about. Where did travel go? Hopefully when it comes back, we can pivot the name to Where is Travel Going, I hope.
Yeah, great. And that is something I always say to people as a consultant as well. You have to promote other businesses. You have to promote other products, even if it's not yours, even if you don't financially benefit. It's really beneficial to you as a brand to
Yeah.
support all the competitors. Don't think competitively, especially now. Let's just support each other.
Oh yeah, and Laura has a great story on the podcast about when she got started that there were one of the tour operators in Hong Kong had too many bookings that he couldn't handle, and he actually gave Laura some of her first customers, and that's how she got started. So really, really interesting story from her, and I think she wants to continue to do that. And I know she has great relationships with the other tour operators doing same kind of tours here in Tokyo, but they actually work together, and especially now all bonding together. So yeah, I totally believe that it's great to the more you give, the more it's going to be reciprocal and you'll receive in the end. So
And one of the great tips I got from your podcast was about Akiya Hunter. So finding the empty houses, which has been a very popular theme on this series as well. We've had a few people talking about their house renovations.
yeah, so these guys, we met them last week. It's two guys, one from Canada, the other from the US, and they basically have started a new business where what they want to do is, I think there's 80 million Akiya. Akiya are abandoned homes in Japan, for those that don't know. They said one of the biggest problems is that the data is so scattered, different in the different prefectures. It's ordered in different ways. The real estate companies, there's no standardization. So what they're actually trying to do is first figure out what kind of all the data they can get their hands on and trying to bring some structure to it. And so that anyone that's interested in Akiya, it's a bit intimidating, can find things easily. And then beyond that, being able to provide services to take people, be able to see, they said the reality is 80% of most of them aren't, probably structurally sound to live in or do something. But one of the cool things that they want to do is not only like buy or receive a free house, but what do we do when we have the house then? Do you live in it permanently? Is it temporary? Is it a guest house? And then what do we build around the community and make it a place that's giving back to the community? So if I go down there to Izu and have a house, what kind of impact am I going to make on the community, or how can I work together with the community for tourism or just sustainable existence? If more people come down and are occupying Akia that weren't there prior, how do we do this sustainably? And so the guys are building kind of this out. It's called Akia and Inaka. They have a website. I think they just put it up a week or two ago, so check that out. I'll probably be having them on the podcast as well, and hopefully you can too moving forward.
Yeah, wonderful. And getting more international residents, getting anybody out into the rural areas is definitely connected to travel, because we know that local residents in Japan, especially international residents, are kind of an amazing bridge of information outside of Japan and give a lot of free social media marketing for rural areas. So we definitely want to get people, if they want to buy an old abandoned house, to get them out to the country areas and help rebuild those dying communities. Definitely.
Yeah, I agree.
Last comment from Holly. Holly, you're awesome. You two feed off each other very well. This was excellent. Very interesting interview. Thank you so much. And hopefully there's people out there who didn't comment but enjoyed our talk today.
Yes.
And thank you so much, Jessop. That was awesome.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, Joy.
Yeah. And hopefully I'll appear on your podcast sometime.
We'll make it happen.
That's fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Tomorrow, again at 9 a.m., we're talking about sustainable online shop and vegan candle making. All right. Have a good day, everyone. Take care.